the moons of Relac. 7 were little more than dust-choked rocks orbiting a bloated gas giant, but for the Karnak Empire, they serve as a forward observation and interrogation post. And today, they held a trophy, one broken, bloodied human, dragged in from the ruins of a battle the Karnaks hadn't even bothered to call a war. He sat chained in a low-ceiling cell, more like a meat locker than a brig. His wrists were locked behind his back, ankles shackled, and a neural collar pulsed faintly on his neck. His head hung low, dark blonde hair matted with dry blood and sweat. His body was motionless, gaunt but not frail. A silent ember hid behind his expressionless face. The guards laughed. Still hasn't said a word. One sneered in the guttural growl of Karnak speech. Is he brain-dead or just slow? The other leaned in, tapping the cell wall with the butt of his spear. Maybe he thinks silence is noble. You know how these humans are, always clinging to theatrics. Huh, look at him. All those medals they say he wore, now he pisses himself in chains. They laughed again, louder, more for their own amusement than out of cruelty. To them, the human was already dead, just taking too long to realize it. But Rourke Thane heard everything. He cataloged voices, footsteps, schedules, guard rotations. The flickering hum in the power cell meant it was an old unit, easy to fry with feedback. The air circulation vent above him pulsed every 21 seconds. On shift change, 2 guards left their posts unarmed for 7 seconds during handoff. They thought he was broken. Let them. Pain had long ceased to matter. It was a sensation he'd been trained to override, to file away like irrelevant data. What mattered were patterns, weaknesses, windows. He was a sniper, not a brute. He didn't rush in like the Marines or fight in flashy duels like the Solar Blades. He waited, he measured, and when the world got quiet, when the seconds counted louder than the heartbeat in his chest, that was when he became inevitable. Outside the cell, the Karnaks began a new round of taunts, louder now, putting on a show for General Vraxer, who had entered the corridor with 2 elite guards in ceremonial armor. Vraxer stood tall, armored in crimson-black alloy, eyes like twin embers sunk into a scale face hardened by decades of blood conquest. He looked at the prisoner with the same regard one might offer a wounded rodent. "This," he said to his entourage, "is the best it could send?" A silent, shattered ghost. "No rank insignia, General," one of the guards commented. "We believe he burned them off. We found melted alloy fragments fused to his chest." Vraxer grunted. "Pathetic. Let him rot. His kind fought with honor once. Now they send relics of old wars to die quietly." One of the soldiers leaned in toward the human, spitting. "What's your name, little man?" No reply. "Don't worry. I'm sure it'll be on your grave marker." Rourke's face twitched, just slightly, barely visible, but it was the first change in hours. Vraxer caught it. His expression stiffened. "Leave him," he ordered. The hallway cleared, boots clanking in mechanical rhythm, until only shadows and hums remained. Rourke slowly lifted his head. One eye was swollen, but the other burned with cold lucidity. His jaw tensed. 8 minutes. That's all he would need. He shifted his wrist slightly, barely enough to move, but enough to press a magnetized clasp built into his fingertip. A hidden feature, deep military tech, buried beneath skin and bone. With a subtle twist, the clasp sent a feedback surge into the neural collar. It sparked, shorted out, and released with a soft hiss. He didn't smile. Smiling wasted energy. First came silence, then breath, then motion. The chain fell from his wrists. His body coiled like a predator ready to strike. Every joint moved with surgical calculation. Shoulders rolling, neck cracking, feet pressing lightly to the floor. The door was still active, but the guards hadn't bothered to lock it properly. Rourke tapped the edge of the panel with a thin strip of blood-soaked fabric torn from his own uniform. An old sniper's trick. Conductive sweat and salt completed the circuit. The door hissed open. No alarms. No cameras. Karnaks relied on intimidation, not caution. First guard. 2 meters away. Facing outward. Rourke struck with the chain, looping it around the alien's neck and twisting. There was no sound. No time for one. The alien's body slumped against the wall. He dragged the corpse into the shadows, stripping the alien's sidearm, a compact rail pistol with 6 shots and a curved blade. He checked the corridor. Clear. Thane moved. Silent, precise, invisible. By the time the base realized their mistake, it would already be too late. From the lower level, voices echoed, alert tones, complaints about systems lagging. Perfect. Chaos would bloom soon. Rourke slipped into the main utility hallway and tapped into the maintenance panel. He uploaded a virus, encoded inside a biometric chip in his molar that had been designed for deep infiltration. Its function: sever comms, disable internal surveillance, and trigger false movement alerts across opposite sectors. It worked in 5 seconds. Guard began to move. Lights flickered. Rourke vanished into the dark, the pistol resting cold against his thigh. 2 minutes gone. He found the communications relay chamber. A single technician inside. Rourke entered through the ceiling grate, dropped behind the Karnak, and slit its throat before the alien could turn. Blood pooled in slow, arterial pulses. He accessed the terminal. The layout was different. Karnak script blocky and jagged, but he'd studied it before. Human intelligence had trained him to read war like a book. He patched into the Empire's outer relay and embedded a loop signal, a ghost message bouncing between distant nodes. It read, "Facility secure. No contact anomalies." They wouldn't question it. Not in time. 3 minutes gone. He retrieved the technician's access card and used it to open the armory. It wasn't large, just an emergency outpost, but had what he needed: a scope-compatible rifle, suppressor module, and enough ammo for 7 kill shots. He wouldn't need that many. Moving fast now, he set his rifle on a vent grid overlooking the central war room. There below was Vraxer. The general stood in full command, giving orders, unaware of the phantom above. Rourke adjusted his breath, steadied the crosshairs, waited for the angle, waited for the hush, waited. A pulse, a flash, a kill. The alien standing beside Vraxer crumpled. A direct shot through the eye. Panic exploded. Guards shouted. Vraxer spun, but another shot ripped through the ceiling beams and struck the ceiling generator core. Lights failed. The war room blacked out. For minutes gone. They searched upward, but Rourke had already moved, slipped into crawlspace shafts, vanished like vapor. He planted charges in 3 core junctions, each rigged with micro-implosive shrapnel, not meant to flatten the base, but to rip its systems to dust. He returned to the upper tower, opened a window hatch to the dusty moon's surface, and stared into the stars. He raised the comms unit he'd stolen from the technician, tuned it to a buried frequency, human encoded, whispered one sentence. Rourke Thane, relay this to command. Objective compromised. Deliver fire. 5 minutes gone. Somewhere far away, a ship would hear that call and drop a kinetic rod from orbit. He checked his charges. Sync timers. Sealed the hatch. Outside, the stars kept burning. Uncaring. Eternal. Inside, the Karnaks descended into shrieking panic. At minute 6, he descended into the lower barracks, intercepting a squad sent to find the sniper. He left only corpses behind. At minute 7, he circled back toward the hangar bay and killed the pilot readying the escape transport. At minute 8, he walked calmly past the corpse of the Karnak, who had spat on him. He placed one hand on the wall, as if honoring it. Then he vanished into the dark, just as the first explosion echoed through the post. The last thing the Karnak saw before the base shattered around them was a flashing red glyph written in human script across every screen. You mocked a ghost. Then came fire. Then silence. Then legend. The blast from Relax 7's detainment post was visible from orbit, a rising plume of lightless dust and shattered alloy, silent in the void but deafening in consequence. The human fleet, stationed beyond the radar shadow of the gas giant, received Rourke's signal just moments before the detonation. It came as a narrowband transmission, devoid of ceremony, stripped of context. A voice, quiet but absolute. Rourke Thane, relay this to command. Objective compromised. Deliver fire. The The bridge of the HSS Cassandra fell into a silence that even the rumble of the ship's systems couldn't interrupt. Lieutenant Calder stood frozen over the communications console. The headset pressed to his ear like it delivered a ghost whisper. His eyes didn't blink. His breath didn't rise. "Lieutenant," Captain Rios asked, her tone cautious. He turned to her, eyes wide, mouth parting like he wasn't sure how to speak. "It's him." "Who?" "Thane. He's alive." The captain stared for a long moment, as if trying to reconcile myth with reality. "Impossible. We confirmed casualties from the Sarkin offensive. He was on the list." "Someone made a mistake," Calder muttered, voice hollow. "Or someone covered it up. No one on that bridge needed a reminder of who Rourke Thane was." In the old dossiers, before the human fleets had scattered and reorganized into desperate flotillas, Thane's name had sat at the top of the short list. Class X snipers, each trained from adolescence in deep silence war doctrine, capable of single-handed assaults on planetary facilities. But Thane had gone beyond doctrine. He had operated without team support, without recovery ops, with full termination autonomy. The man didn't ask for backup. He never called for extraction. He simply disappeared. And when he reappeared, empires crumbled. The feed from Relac 7 was degraded but intact. Calder pulled it up on the command deck's main display. The screen blinked through static and fragments. Karnak officers screaming, a war room blinking red, a security feed showing the silhouette of a human stepping through smoke, rifle in hand. There was no audio, just a rising heat of panic, the unmistakable body language of an empire being stalked from within its own bones. Rios watched it play through once. Then again. "This isn't just a survivor," she said finally. "This is a message." Calder nodded. He gave them 8 minutes. And he didn't even need that long. Word traveled fast, through encrypted channels, across scout ships and refugee convoys, down into deep ice bunkers housing what remained of Earth's command infrastructure. A human had not only escaped the Karnak detainment facility, but had dismantled alone, killed its garrison, executed General Vraxer's second-in-command, and transmitted a tactical strike beacon before the orbital detonation. The ghost of Rourke Thane had returned, and the galaxy trembled like it felt a long-buried earthquake shift beneath its feet. Within the Karnak dominion, the reaction was something closer to dread. On the imperial capital world of Mjural, the High Command summoned an emergency session beneath the crimson light of the central chamber's flame pits. 12 warlords gathered in a ring of carved obsidian, each bearing the sigils of entire subjugated systems. General Vraxer stood at the center, a towering mass of armored fury, his claws twitching. "Who was responsible for post-security?" he snarled. None answered. "Who gave the order to keep the human alive?" Still silence. He roared, and the force of it cracked one of the obsidian steps. "We let our enemies believe they had ghosts. Now the ghost is real, and it has spilled our blood." Warlord Shuril, eldest among them, hissed with disapproval. He should never have been captured. That was the first mistake. "We needed leverage," Vraxer barked. "The humans respond to grief, to their heroes falling. We plan to parade him, record his confession, break him. You underestimated him." Vraxer didn't respond. He knew the truth of it too well. But admitting failure among Karnak elites was tantamount to heresy. Instead, he redirected his fury into movement, storming from the council chamber and ordering the immediate mobilization of Omega Pac 9, a hunting squadron of biologically enhanced enforcers, bred and trained to kill Cyrov operatives. They would be dispatched to Sector Theta 4, where the human fleets were last tracked. Their orders were direct: eliminate Rourke Thane, capture optional, display of corpse mandatory. But fear was not a thing easily unlearned, and among the Omega Pack, whispers had already begun. The humans called him Dead Silence, the sniper who could move without trace, whose kill shots defied physics, who once detonated an entire orbital shipyard with a single bullet placed in its stress regulator. Legends are born from exaggeration, but Thane's legend didn't need embellishment. The numbers alone spoke. 211 confirmed kills, 0 mission failures, 1 disappearance. Now 1 resurrection. Back aboard the Cassandra, Calder stood alone in the comms room, reviewing an old file. It was Rourke's personnel dossier, redacted, patched, overwritten with 5 separate clearance tags. But one thing remained unchanged, a video log from Thane's training phase. The screen flickered and a younger, cleaner version of the man appeared, dressed in a zero-gravity combat harness, speaking into a terminal recorder. "They teach you to take the shot," he said calmly. "But they don't tell you when not to. That's the part that matters. Discipline, knowing the consequence of a single bullet before you squeeze the trigger. War doesn't need noise. It needs results." Calder paused the video. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the rising understanding of what had just begun. Rourke Thane's escape wasn't the end of something. It was the prologue. In the shadows of Seraph Belt, Thane drifted aboard a stolen Karnak shuttle, its interior now stripped of insignia, its power signature masked behind ion interference clouds. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He sat cross-legged beside his rifle, recalibrating its scope manually. Most human soldiers relied on smart targeting now, AIs embedded in their visors, trajectory assists. Thane preferred his eye. One lens, one muscle memory, refined through 1,000 breathless seconds. The ship's system pinged. A message had arrived from the Cassandra, short, encrypted, text only, confirmed status. He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he slid the rifle into its case, checked the magnetic lock, and stood. The quiet hum of the ship soothed him. The void didn't lie. It didn't posture like the Karnaks or flatter like the humans. In space, you either endured or you vanished. He opened the console and typed 2 words. Objective incomplete. Then he sent coordinates, ones he had stolen from the Karnak mainframe before the blast. Coordinates that marked Njurul, the Karnak capital world. He had seen the look in Vraxer's eyes during the taunting. Not mockery, not victory. Fear. A fear buried so deep the general didn't recognize it until it was too late. Rourke would bring that fear back, feed it to the Karnak heart, choke the Empire with it. He leaned back in the pilot's seat and stared into the stars. He didn't need a fleet. He didn't need reinforcements. He was already inside their nightmares. And he was just getting started. The silence in the high orbit over Njurul was deceptive. Below, the Karnak capital pulsed with firelit towers and endless noise, ritual chants, military drills, the grinding machinery of conquest. To the Empire's citizens, the city was the epitome of invulnerability. Massive battlements ringed every district. Anti-orbital batteries aimed skyward with predatory patience. But none of them watched inward. None of them prepared for the one man whose greatest strength was slipping past every wall while eyes looked elsewhere. Rourke Thane stepped out of the stolen shuttle in the underlevels of the industrial sector unnoticed. No alarms triggered. No guards reacted. His stolen access credentials were burned into the ship's transponder, marked as cargo transport, low security, non-priority. He had landed inside the belly of the beast, and no one knew it yet. Above ground, General Vrax's command compound gleamed with blood-polished alloy, the outer gates thrumming with shield barriers. Guards in exo-armor patrolled in squads of 6, their every step measured, their discipline brutal. Since Relac, 7, every outpost had tightened, every soldier trained harder. The myth of the human sniper had grown in every debriefing room, mutating from report to rumor to warning. In less than a week, Rourke Thane had become a phantom that haunted their doctrines. Vraxer sat in his inner chamber, hands steepled over a holographic display of orbital sectors. The Omega Pack had failed to report in. 3 days ago, they'd been dispatched to intercept human recon craft in Sector Theta 4. Their last signal had been static and blood. He didn't need confirmation. He already knew what had happened. "He's still out there," Vraxer muttered. Warlord Shirul stood nearby, his long snout curled in disdain. This fixation on one soldier clouds your judgment. It is not fixation. It is reality. You saw what he did to Relac. 7, he has information. Data I can't explain. Tactics I don't understand. He doesn't fight like the others. He doesn't even think like them. Then perhaps you finally met an enemy worthy of your fear. Vraxer rose sharply. I do not fear him. Then prove it. Draw him out. End this. The general didn't respond, not immediately. He turned to the command console and keyed in a sector command. Initiate civilian security lockdown. Full city-wide surveillance activation. I want all motion anomalies traced within 1 kilometer of this compound. He will come. It is the only logical target. And when he does, I'll be ready. Shuril didn't argue. He simply turned and left, his slow gait echoing through the polished hallways like a death bell. In the lower tunnels, Rourke moved through shadows and smoke. The infrastructure beneath Njiro was ancient, predating Karnak expansion by a millennium. Forgotten rail systems twisted through ruins and cavernous support levels. Even here, old machinery groaned under the weight of the city's endless hunger. To the Empire, these were dead places. But to Rourke, they were arteries, pathways to the heart. He wore no insignia. His uniform was patched together from the remains of fallen Karnak scouts, utility gray, fitted tight, marked with maintenance glyphs. No one looked at engineers twice, especially not the ones who walk without fear. He passed 2 patrols without notice, eyes down, shoulders slouched. But inside his head, every detail registered: rifle models, movement patterns, armor weaknesses. He didn't carry a sniper rifle here. Not yet. Instead, he carried a folded frame inside a shoulder pack, disassembled, untraceable, hand-tuned. Above him, scanners swept every alley. Facial mapping grids rotated across every plaza. But the system wasn't built to detect humans. It cataloged Karnak facial structures. Their arrogance had built blind spots into their own network. Rourke simply stepped between them. He reached the first choke point, an energy substation buried beneath a war monument. From here, he could cut power to the northeast quarter, including a piece of Raxor's compound. He pried open the console, attached a pulse scrambler, and injected a timer chip. The delay was 6 minutes. That was all he needed. He moved on to the second node, stepping through a collapsed maintenance shaft and into a service corridor. It reeked of ozone and molten steel. Ahead, 2 engineers argued over a malfunctioning coolant valve. Rourke walked past them. One of them glanced his way, paused. "Hey," the alien barked. "Authorization code?" Rourke didn't look back. "I said..." The sentence ended in a gasp. The engineer's body twitched and fell, a blade buried beneath his jaw. The second tried to shout, but caught a silence round the throat. He dragged them aside, stashed the bodies behind a panel, and kept moving. 3 minutes left. The inner wall of the compound was ahead. A vertical shaft led up through an old elevator tunnel, long sealed by policy, not function. He scaled the inner wall, using a grip module clipped to his boots. At 30 meters, he paused and listened. No movement above. He pushed upward, silent as vapor, until he reached the access hatch and slid it open. He emerged in a utility closet behind the command barracks. Guards moved past the door every 60 seconds. 2-man patrols. Always right, left, right. He timed the breath, moved through the door, stepped behind one guard, snapped the neck, dragged the body silently, turned. The second saw him. Too late. Rourke closed the distance in one heartbeat and plunged a blade to the alien's eye. Blood hissed against the sleeve. No alarms. He retrieved a key card from the guard's belt and entered the outer war room. The corridor pulsed red. Emergency lights. Tension. And then silence broke. Outside, the northeast quarter of the city darkened. Power died. Scanners blinked off. Surveillance feeds froze. Inside Vraxor's compound, the sudden blackout triggered confusion. Guards shouted. Backup systems tried to reboot. Too slow. In the war room, Vraxor barked commands. Restore power. Seal inner doors. Full lockdown. He was already too late. Rourke stood in the chamber's upper balcony, hidden in the black, assembling the final piece of his rifle. The room below glowed with panic motion. Holograms failed. Officers scattered. Vraxor slammed a gauntlet on the console. Find him. I already did, Rourke muttered. He sighted down the scope. The crosshairs settled. One breath. One squeeze. The shot cracked like a whisper. Not at Vraxor. Not yet. The round struck the console directly in front of the general, sending shards of alloy and sparks into the air. The room froze. No one moved. Another shot shattered a support column, throwing an officer to the floor. Then a third, this one a calculated ricochet, struck the back wall, embedding itself inches from the general's head. Rourke spoke, his voice projected from a stolen helmet intercom patched into the room's broadcast grid. 8 minutes, Vraxer. The general stared upward, eyes wide, chest rising. Every second now is borrowed. He drew his weapon, aimed wildly at the balcony. Empty. The sniper was already gone. Outside, the compound's emergency systems locked down. Reinforcements flooded the gates. Drones scrambled into the sky, but they would find no trace. No trail, just echo. Inside the chamber, Vraxer stood trembling, not from rage, from the realization that the ghost was not coming for him. He was already here, and the last 8 minutes of the Empire had begun. The inner sanctum of the Karnak Command Citadel was silent now. No klaxons, no barking orders, no thunder of boots on steel. Just a strained hum of emergency lighting, and the smell of ozone drifting through scorched air. General Vraxer paced beneath the fractured dome of the war chamber, the cracked remains of the main console glowing with static. His officers were dead, most of them fallen to precision strikes or misdirected countermeasures. The rest had simply fled. He was alone. He tried to control his breathing, tried to slow the erratic pounding in his twin hearts. But the silence felt alive, as if it were listening, as if the chamber itself had begun to sweat. "You think I fear you," he growled into the open air, voice echoing off polished alloy. "You think a ghost can conquer an empire?" No reply. He gripped his pulse rifle tighter. His armor whirred as it sealed tighter to his chest. The thermal scan embedded in his visor flickered, caught a flicker of movement in the far corridor, and vanished again. Too fast. Too faint. Vraxer turned. "Nothing," he snarled. "You're just a man." Behind him, something moved. He spun and fired. The bolt sizzled into the wall, leaving a smear of molten metal. Empty. Another flicker to the left. He turned again, slower this time. Still nothing. "You hide in shadows," he barked. "But shadows can't kill gods." The sound came next. Not a voice. Not words. A sound brief and mechanical. A click. Metal sliding against metal. Rourke Thane stepped from the gloom. He wore no armor. No insignia. Just matte black infiltration, gear streaked with blood and ash. The rifle in his hands was lowered. He didn't need it anymore. His eyes, cold and unblinking, met the general's. Vraxer lifted his weapon. "You're too late," he said, chest heaving. "The Empire has already sealed its sky. No signal escapes. No one's coming for you." "I didn't call for anyone," Rourke replied, calm and steady. Vraxer hesitated, confused for the briefest second. Then he fired. The shot cracked through the air, but Rourke was already in motion. He dove low, rolled, came up with his sidearm, and fired a silenced round that struck Vraxer's wrist. The rifle spun out of his claws, clattering to the floor. Rourke didn't stop. He closed the distance in 5 rapid steps and slammed into the general's chest with full momentum. The two crashed into the central dais, scattering shattered shards of the shattered display across the floor. They grappled. Vraxer was massive, twice Rourke's size, muscle-wrapped in armor. But Thane fought with economy. Each movement exact, learned through repetition and perfected through necessity. He ducked a claw swipe, jammed his elbow into the general's rib, then slammed a knee into the hinge of the exo-armor. The armor cracked. Vraxer roared and swung wide. The strike caught Rourke across the face, splitting his cheek and staggering him backward. The general surged forward, snarling, claws outstretched. "You kill from afar because you're weak," he spat, face deaf like a warrior. Rourke wiped blood from his mouth. "I do." He drew a blade from his belt, short, curved, obsidian black, human-made. The edge caught the light like a whisper. Vraxer charged. Steel met fury. They clashed again, this time without hesitation. Rourke danced inside the general's reach, landing fast, surgical strikes, thigh, elbow, side. Vrax's blows were wild but crushing, forcing Thane to roll, slide, dodge. Sparks flew from every impact. The war chamber trembled beneath the weight of their struggle. Then Rourke slipped under a sweeping punch and embedded the blade into Vrax's left side. The general howled, twisted, and grabbed him by the throat. He lifted the sniper off the ground. "You end here," he hissed. Rourke choked. Blood welled in his throat. The world dimmed. He didn't panic. Instead, he raised his free hand and jammed a small device, no larger than a coin, against the side of Vrax's helmet. A magnetic detonator. One of only two he had left. Vraxer realized too late. He threw Rourke aside, ripping the device off, but the charge had already triggered. A blinding pulse ignited in the visor, overloading the general's optical interface. He staggered backward, blinded. Rourke landed hard, ribs bruised, lungs burning. He forced himself up, ignoring the searing pain that rolled through his chest. He retrieved the rifle from the far wall, collapsed it to half-length, and approached. Vraxer swung blindly, roaring, his claws cutting air. "You don't belong here," he shouted. "You're a relic. I'm what you made me," Rourke said. He raised the rifle. Vraxer turned, eyes useless, breathing ragged. "You killed your own future," the general spat. Rourke pulled the trigger. The shot punched through Vraxer's secondary heart. The alien collapsed to one knee, choking. Armor cracked and blood spilled down his chest. His gaze, empty and unfocused, settled somewhere beyond Rourke's shoulder. The sniper stepped forward, rifle still raised. "Humanity was never weak," he said quietly. "You were just too arrogant to look closer." Vraxer's body slumped forward, motionless. The chamber fell still again. No alarms, no commands, no resistance. Rourke exhaled once. He activated the uplink on his gauntlet. The device, preloaded before the breach, pinged 3 orbital satellites, the ones the Karnaks believed were still in their control. Rourke had corrupted them during his infiltration, rewritten their protocols. A final signal was sent. A human broadcast overtook the Karnak capital screens, relays, and public towers. It showed Rourke Thane's face battered, bloodied, but standing. He said nothing for 5 seconds. Then he spoke. "You mocked a ghost, and now your empire kneels to silence." The feed cut. Moments later, kinetic rods fell from orbit, striking deep military zones across the Karnak Dominion. No civilian targets. No unnecessary cruelty. Just surgical obliteration of war infrastructure. The message was clear. On a dozen Karnak worlds, garrisons surrendered. Officers stood down. Some fled into exile. They knew the Empire hadn't fallen in a grand war or a planetary invasion. It had bled out from a single wound. One man, one rifle, 8 minutes. In the aftermath, aboard the HSS Cassandra, Lieutenant Calder stood at the forward viewport, reading the transmission log. No return signal from Rourke. No locator ping. Just a clean disconnect. "He's gone," someone murmured. "No," Calder said. "He's where he always was. Out there, watching." In the endless dark beyond the starfields, a small vessel drifted without name, without beacon. Inside, Rourke Thane sat alone, disassembling his rifle with ritual precision. Every screw cleaned, every wire checked. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. The job was never about glory. It was about the silence between wars, and the shadows that waited when empires dared forget what fear truly meant.